your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
Hello.
Hi, and welcome to Untold Radio. This is episode 51 of Down South Anomalies.
Yes, it is.
And we must remember, because Aspasia tomorrow in Sydney, today actually,
now,
but for those
right
internationally in America especially,
it
is our major referendum on the Indigenous, and it's the yes vote.
Well, yes or no vote to give our Indigenous, our First Nations people a voice in Parliament.
Yes, which is so important.
Totally, but hey.
We must always state that we are broadcasting on stolen land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we respect and acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging. And let's hope tomorrow in our hearts that the country unanimously votes yes.
Yeah.
Which I am extremely worried.
I don't know how it's going to go. I'm not sure, but
how can you not really? In these circumstances,
people's tunnel, realities. Just depends who you are and what you've been through, and what you've brought up with.
We're talking about one of the youngest nations in the world.
Yeah, I know.
And one of the oldest Indigenous, if not the most.
Well, it is the oldest
Indigenous race, and they keep finding skeletal remains that date back thousands of years.
Yeah. Anyway,
our heart is with our Indigenous culture, and our heart is with our audience. Uncle Bones, Ristel, Malcolm, so many great people that have responded.
They tune in every week, and we really appreciate.
Astounding. Now tomorrow,
do you think we scared people last week a little bit? Maybe.
I don't know. I hope not. But we were honest about our history.
Not scared them, but
it's when we collide all that stuff, and we had to do that on our 50th episode.
Yeah. Anyway, it's all good.
And look, I just want to send our absolute respect and love for people. Now, we might not be able to even get into the chat. We're pre-recording this the night before.
We are.
But tomorrow, we actually have a private lunch.
As when this drops at midday.
With Ross Coulthard, the man that brought David Grush to the public there on News Nation. I know behind the scenes was Leslie Keane and Ralph Blumenthal and many other people. Publicly, it was Ross. And we have a private lunch with him. So
we do, at your sister's house.
Yes, I wonder how that's going to go, because we've said some good, some bad, and some indifferent. Well, not that bad, really.
We haven't said bad. We just said what we said. I'll own everything I've said.
Yeah, and
still stand by it.
Also, we will be discussing, hopefully that we'll be able to get Ross for a podcast, which will be the smallest number of people I've ever
I'm going to
reached
put
in
the hard
word
on him to do so.
Oh,
but anyway,
you jump across that table and get him,
telling him it's happening, whether he likes
it or not.
Anyway,
so today's episode is entitled Confessions of a Dangerous Book. Mm-hmm. And we must acknowledge that the incredible program on Untold Radio by Dr. Dean Bertram and Jason there is coming to an end.
It's sad.
Well, Jason's got a lot of art and graphic work to do, and Dr. Dean's
busy
in the midst of that incredible film,
that documentary
that is making on Ray Palmer and the Dero and Schaefer mystery
this
and all
stuff
that
takes
stuff.
It takes time
It
to
really
get these
does.
shows together. And
you've got a family behind the scenes.
You've got
both
other
those
commitments.
gentlemen have families.
Yeah, and
so in a way,
we're busy all the time.
Well, we're crazy all the time. But we just finished Bondi Wood. What a great festival
that was!
That
film festival was awesome.
16
but anyway,
Q&As and introductions. I never thought I'd be able to get through them.
Crazy.
I've come out of that feeling so exhausted all week long.
But you'll be all right. You've
been
old.
Good. You've bounced back pretty quickly.
I always bounce. There was no time to stop for me. I was straight to the kids.
Yeah,
anyway.
Exactly that evening. But So in a way, this is a bit of a tribute and acknowledgement and how inspiring that program was.
Absolutely.
Because books, they're like records, they're like films, they're like documentaries.
Yeah,
They actually take you into a completely new parallel universe.
they do. They
And
do.
all of a sudden you realize you're not alone, that
Mhm.
there's people that have similar ideas
They think like you do.
and they
Well,
build
there's
on
people
your
that just think
imagination.
like themselves. And
Yeah.
nobody
And well, there's
else.
some very strange books we've got tonight.
There are some
That's why
strange
we
books.
put the disclaimer up. It's not so much on us; it's on the literature.
Well,
we're
it's the
gonna show.
literature. We're just
And
putting the
this is-
literature out there.
This
you know.
really is the icing on the cake.
It is. This is the stuff that we've been looking into and reading over the last 30 odd years that we've been together. Stuff we've collected, stuff we've come across, and just because we're putting it up,
3 years.
yeah, it doesn't mean that we actually endorse it, but it's
No,
just
by no
something that we've
means.
looked into because it was there. And, it is about gathering information all the time.
Well, Sydney was running a festival here that was quite robust for a long time called the Festival of Dangerous Ideas.
That's right. And it was a
And
great
It was
festival.
an incredible festival. I don't think it exists anymore.
Probably not. No,
it doesn't.
I think they ran through all the dangerous ideas and there's
they
none
didn't.
left.
No, they didn't. So we're not endorsing any of these books, but we're putting them up there for you to go and have a peek.
If
at
you're interested,
and
you can
track
go
them
and have a
down.
look. That's right.
And it's
That's right.
amazing just how much lost literature has been refound
Mhm,
electronically.
mhm, exactly.
So where do
That's
we...
because they're exploiting. Well, they are. I know that Amazon are grabbing books and
Oh, look,
reprinting them, and
to
they
tell
don't
you
have the
the truth,
copyright.
and I know a lot of our authors
Yeah,
have their books
absolutely.
up on Amazon, but
Absolutely.
the best bet is to actually find the author itself.
Well, if you can go to the
or a
author
second-hand copy
directly to the
and
author,
avoid
great.
the exorbitant prices
unless-
that Amazon can throw on things. at
Unless they
times.
say that it's through Amazon, then you go through Amazon. But yeah, anyway,
All
what are
right.
you going to do?
Okay, I can remember finding 2 copies of Legend Meets Science in the bargain bin down at Central. in
I
that
love a
book
bargain.
exchange.
Oh yes, at the
Yeah.
book. The bargain.
And that's
books.
gone now too.
Yeah, that was
So
sad.
let's go up and see where our inspiration
Okay.
came from, which is a fairly interesting book to begin with. But before that, here's something for all our friends on Untold.
I love a good quote.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, let's
Yeah.
embrace Sasquatch and go out there with the right intent. Maybe it'll look like this if you go out with the right heart.
Okay, so these are these Halloween?
No, this is
This
not
is-
Halloween. I think
what is
this comes
this?
from that film we showed a peek of. You know that one I
Oh.
was telling you about?
Oh right, yeah,
that
yeah.
gets a little naughty.
Oh right, okay. What
And,
was that? What was that
Now,
called?
with
Oh,
I'll
God, I'm
don't
trying
go
to
there.
remember.
Now, with
Yeah.
Halloween coming up,
Yes, yes.
we're sort of deciding on costumes, aren't
Yeah,
we?
we are.
Now, these
I
are
love
some
that
Halloween
outfit.
outfits
Yeah,
from
that's-
the 20s, I
yeah,
believe.
they're really old. Those ones, they're really vintage.
And these ones too, which is
Yeah.
sort of like the Michelin Men. Can you go down one?
Oh, hang on, what's happening
Yeah,
here?
you're moving.
I'm
you touch
shuffling.
those.
I'm shuffling things around.
I love those.
So is
But
that the Michelin Man, or is
I
that?
don't know. That's a very early version of the Michelin
That's
Man.
very interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
again, that's
Hmm.
from the 20s and 30s. You get rather hot in that
Oh, you would.
Halloween
You
costume.
burn up.
But where we got the idea for Confessions of a Dangerous Book, the
Of a
Festival of Dangerous Ideas, actually came from a book that was released in 1984
Right.
by the host of The Gong Show, believe it or not,
Yeah.
Chuck
Oh,
Barris.
Chuck Barris. He's got a lot to answer for, doesn't he?
He
Don't you
was
think?
a...
He really lowered the bar on television.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
he-
I think in a way this is the birth of reality TV, but it's
Yeah,
game show
that's,
TV.
That's
The dating
that
game.
is lowering the bar on television. It's like just put anybody up on television and go for it. You know?
So
Anyway.
he was a real entity, and boy, did he have a campy, crazy way as a television host of the Gong Show.
Absolutely
didn't
did.
he?
And
Now,
that's his book
There's
there.
a couple of
yeah.
images out of
Yeah.
his book.
The Gong Show.
But do you know what this book was about? Was the fact that he stated that under the guise of
Yeah.
the Gong Show, or even prior to that,
in the entertainment
that
business.
he was
yep.
employed by possibly the CIA,
Well,
maybe
some
a bevy
you
of
know,
intelligence agents,
yeah,
to be an assassin.
of course.
And a TV host was... Now, lots of people just thought this was absolutely ludicrous
But
and did not believe it, but
No.
he stood true
yeah,
to this tone.
hmm
And then it became the first directorial debut of
Of-
George Clooney.
that's right. Confessions of a
actually-
Dangerous
It's
Mind.
not a bad movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot better
Yeah.
than the men that stare at
Oh,
you
yeah, that
ghosts.
was.
So I think in a way they trivialized that
No, they
story.
did.
But what a weird thing.
Very weird.
But you know what? It just,
So if you want to see about Chuck Barris, I don't know how true to, how true any of it
I
is.
think the movie's a bit
but-
more of a satire that shows the reality. But the
But I'm
reality
saying
is
there's some reality in there.
that
So
Chuck stated that he was using the cover of a TV host and producer and creator
Yep.
of these game shows. But at
and
the
he
same
was,
time,
and he was topping people.
33 hits, he reckoned.
Wow.
Can you believe that? That is rather
33
odd,
hits.
isn't it?
Was he working for the Masons?
I don't know. But when you think of our
Well,
man,
33 hits.
when you think of our author
which one?
and theorist from Mad Cow Morning News,
All right.
Daniel
Yes.
Hopsinger,
Yep.
and when he wrote that incredible book on Muhammad Atta directly after,
Yep.
and he spoke about Rudy Decker
Decker,
and Hoffman
yes.
Aviation, which was down there in Florida.
Mhm.
And supposedly the story was that 17 out of the 20 hijackers had been trained in there at some stage.
Yeah.
Directly across the road was what?
The circus.
The
Ringling Brothers. Yeah.
And
Barnum and Bailey Circus. Training school.
Which is a great training school for spies.
Absolutely.
Sleight of hand. But
well,
the big thing is
because
you
they
get to travel the world. You
all
go to
over the
Russia.
world. That's-
Yeah,
well, how many times did the Russian, what was the Russian thing that used to come? The Moscow Circus.
yeah.
I'll tell you what, they're coming in as circus clowns and acrobats. I don't think
know
so.
how many times the Gong Show traveled the world, but who knows?
Well, he might have been traveling around and making deals with people who, looking for talent.
All right. So
Anyway,
let's get our. We've finally mastered after a year. We've finally mastered
worked out
PowerPoint.
how to get our PowerPoint into this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for being with us.
Yep.
We are getting back to interviews. We actually had an amazing interview that fell through again.
Don't even talk about it. Don't talk about it.
We have got some really interesting
They don't know that,
going.
so we're just going forward.
We've got Ross
I'm not
Coulthard.
saying anything anymore. I'm just going to turn up and do whatever. Because saying to people, it's just such a, trying to get people organized when they're so busy and things are going on all the time.
So you just think quickly of other people in the chat. There's Charlotte, who's always so sweet.
Yes.
And right on time.
Yeah.
There's just so many great people.
I'm going to say it again, that you are predominantly the person that's in the chat room.
Yes.
So I'm usually, I've done it once or twice when you've been unable to do it, when you've been working. But
and I did this slideshow a couple of years ago, and I've never shown it to anyone, and it was still in its embryonic stage.
Yeah,
but it should be by Katz and Aspasia.
Well,
so my apologies.
That's okay. That's okay. I always get left off everything.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
you are.
Our documentary is called "The Wild Wild World of Jamie Leonardo."
Yeah.
Now, if it was the Wild Wild World of Aspasia and Jamie Leonardo, it would have been a different story.
But
it's
so
not.
I apologize.
Anyway, that's not your fault.
Well.
That was other people
Yeah.
that decided. But hey, whatever. I don't care. I'm happy to be in the background.
No, well, you're never in the background, not with a voice like that, and not with your Greek spirit. So we've run through the notion of Confessions of a Dangerous Book.
Yes.
And now we're going to look at some books that are quite
deemed,
troublesome, interesting, ahead of their time, astounding,
maverick.
Yeah, all those sorts of things.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to do here.
Okay, so is this playing now? Or?
Yes, it is playing. Just calm down. And now,
here we go.
Where we're going to start is with the incredible French writer, philosopher, filmmaker, founding member of the Situationist International, and we've spoken about this gentleman many times.
Him.
Guy Debord.
Yes,
and primarily with our incredible CEO of Randa Nordica.
Oh yes. What's her name?
Orban.
So.
Anyway,
my brain's
forgotten that.
Yeah.
That's dreadful.
Anyway.
Don't go there if you can't remember it.
Well, I got half of it.
All right. Now, the most predominant book there, and we spoke about with Orban about the one of the first theories that Guy Debord came up with, which was derived, which is basically to look at your space and time completely different and become more aware. And that's part of that quantum consciousness project.
Rando Nordica.
That is Rando Nordica.
Absolutely.
But we're talking tonight primarily about the book, The Society of the Spectacle, which I think is more apt today than it's ever been.
Even more so.
All that
sure.
was once lived has now moved into representation.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is a quote from that book. And that says it all, because Guy Debord basically was saying that we're living in a virtual world now. We're actually not really living. We're not experiencing life. And when you think of the mobile phone, the internet, the television set, Netflix, and all those things, how much of life are we really experiencing?
Yeah.
And he didn't want us to become a victim of society.
Well, we have.
But in the end, he committed suicide.
Wow. Well, there
in
you
his
go.
early 60s
Yep.
because he thought he had become a victim of the society
Wow.
he was unveiling.
Gobbled up by it.
Now, have you ever read this book, 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television, by the original Jerry Mander, Jerry Irving Mander?
Yeah, right.
Who was an incredible PR specialist. You know, he created the very first art house cinema in San Francisco in the mid-60s.
Really?
He promoted the Psychedelic Trip Festival. He promoted some of the first film festivals out of San Francisco.
Yeah.
He ran ad campaigns. He wanted to drop war toys from the area, asked people to donate them, drop them onto the Pentagon to prove how stupid the Pentagon was.
Right.
Wall Street Journal, he worked for that. And no, they actually called him the Ralph Nader of advertising.
Okay.
And I remember one stage they were wanting to flood the Grand Canyon. Do you remember that at all? They wanted to actually flood the Grand Canyon.
You need a lot of water
and
to
he
flood
said,
that.
this is the most absurd idea ever. Why don't we flood the Sistine Chapel?
Yeah.
So people walking through it can get close to the art of Michelangelo.
Okay, yeah, well, that makes as much sense as flooding the Grand Canyon.
But what he said was that television isolated us and dulled our minds.
Yeah, well, it does. That's why it's called TV program. It's programming your mind.
For a reason.
Anyway.
Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. 1,345 pages, excuse me.
That's a big one.
Historian and professor at Georgetown University, I believe he was Harvard trained, asserted that a secret society led by Cecil Rhodes, Alfred Milner, and others had considerable influence over British and American foreign policy in the first half of the 20th century.
Well, that's true.
They had formed this society to gradually absorb all the wealth of the world. Now, this book just goes up to the 60s, starts in the 1900s.
Yeah.
And this book has been used by virtually every right-wing organization in the world to say that the New World Order is coming in. The John Birch Society, none dare call it conspiracy by Gary Allen.
But here's the thing: the New World Order has been in. It was the corporations. They are the New World Order,
and they are absorbing all capital and making us poor. And we're there doing the bricks and mortar for their castles. And
it's no secret. It's already been happening in increments over the years. It's come on, guys, let's wake up to ourselves.
And we're not sure whether this man was swinging from the left to the right,
or if he was swinging at all.
Yeah, but I think in the end he was swinging for the statement of his literature.
Okay.
Now here's 3 interesting
This is an
books.
interesting
threesome. What was I thinking?
I don't know what you were thinking with putting in Behold a Pale Horse in there, but anyway.
One of the most ludicrous conspiratorial and ufology books ever by a gentleman that stated he was something a lot more than what he was in real life.
Absolutely.
I think it was just a sailor that watched the side of patrol boats. But in the end, he virtually names everyone in ufology as an arch conspiracist.
Yeah, or an operative.
He died in a storm, a sea of bullets, when he was standing back from avoiding tax and everything else.
Yeah.
But the reason it's in there is because right next to it is a book on the astounding Tavistock Institute.
Yeah, I know.
And about the true story of the Bilderberg burgers. And they work in tandem. And isn't it strange that on 7/7, when the British subway attacks occurred, the only outside bombing was a bus directly outside the Tavistock
Institute.
And Martin Bryant.
I know. Isn't that the most bizarre thing that you've ever heard?
Yeah.
Martin Bryant was Australia's largest, most
spree
spree
killer.
killer. He killed 30
Port Arthur.
some people down in Tasmania in Port Arthur.
And yet his teachers had taken him to Tavistock.
As his psychologist or his psychiatrist, when he was a
That's
young
right.
child, had taken him to the Tavistock Institute in London.
Now, it's
That
another one
is
of those
really-
psychological
I don't
think
know.
tanks, isn't
I don't
it?
know what's going on there.
All right, let's get into this book.
Okay.
By War is a Racket
Isn't it just?
by Smedley Butler, who was a Marine corporal, and I need you to get onto that stuff and look at that. But Smedley, this book was out in the 30s. He actually toured in 1930 when he was still working for the military, saying that the worst thing in the world is the profits made by war. Now, so what he recommended was that conscription was just there for the people in industry that were making those massive profits.
Right.
And he thought if they were conscripted and they had to earn $30 a month by being on the front line, they would no longer assist in war armaments.
Of course they
work
wouldn't.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think it's a really important book. So he was a States Marine Corps Major General.
Yeah.
And a 2-time Medal of Honor recipient, which is quite
so
astounding.
so he basically called war a racket. So
it was a racket.
It's money
really early
making.
in the-
It's
of course it
basically
is.
money
and
making.
what we're seeing right at the moment with so much conflict in
I
the
get
world.
really upset when I hear
Again,
people go,
children suffer.
Well, young
Civilians
people, young boys, generations of young boys are sent
My
off to kill.
grandfather
Yeah,
put his
absolutely.
age up.
Yeah, to go off to war. I bet he regretted it.
He did regret it.
Yeah,
He
big
became an
time.
anti-war poet.
Yeah, he did.
And
he did. Yeah. Anyway,
he did all the air raid stuff.
so so all the war conspiracy and prophets of war, they're all just saying that war is not really what they paint it to be.
Now, here's one of the weirdest books when it comes to conspiratorial thinking. But let's not
You
call
think?
it conspiratorial
No.
thinking. Let's call it just really good investigative journalism. But this book is not. This is not a piece of investigative journalism.
No, it's not.
This is written by a guy who was subpoenaed by Jim Garrison in the assassination of JFK and yet never appeared. Kerry Thornley,
Yes.
who's spent time with Lee Harvey Oswald and wrote this book about a Marine defector to Russia, but it only ever ended up a manuscript. It was the foresight of the head of Illuminate Press, Ron Bonds, who actually published the manuscript in the early 90s and then died under extremely mysterious circumstances himself.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And Ron Bonds put out a lot of Jim Keith, John Keel literature. Later in the piece in the 90s, he was very similar to Adam Parfrey, Free Press. This book is a really intriguing piece of literature.
It's an interesting read, that's for sure.
It is a dangerous book.
Yeah.
It is an odd book. And the manuscript lay there sequestered. I think it was actually in the file somewhere.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Rob Bonds was able to get it released and printed it, The Idle Warriors.
Yeah.
And it's a wild read because it's 3 years before Lee Harvey Oswald is even in the press.
Yeah, exactly. So
now
what's going on
let's
there?
look at the other side of the space race. And probably one of the most questionable figures is our Mars mission man in the middle with Dark Mission there, Richard Hoagland. Now, some of his stuff is highly questionable on fancy films.
Sure.
He was the man about the face on Mars. But Brian O'Leary's book, The Making of an Ex-Astronaut, if you can find that book, that will speak volumes about a parallel space program before anyone else articulated it. And he had to get out of NASA. He was training in the 60s for Mars missions.
He was.
Can you believe that?
Still can't go back to the moon today.
And also, I mean, the incredible Jack Parsons that you can now look at in a fictionalized series there on Netflix, I believe.
Yeah.
And there's lots of literature. Well, he was another student of the occult.
Well,
wasn't he?
wasn't. He was.
And
he
even
was
Hoagland brings.
He was a
lot of-
huge part of the occult movement. He was a shake and mover. He
Jet
hung out.
Propulsion Lab, JPL.
Yeah, JPL is him.
And Robert Anton Wilson with John Carter there.
Yeah.
That is an absolutely extraordinary book and really deserves a read.
Absolutely.
If you're fascinated
it is
about
fascinating.
the alternate side. Now, I'm not sure when it comes to the parallel space program, but there are hints everywhere. And the greatest hint to me is that groundbreaking book from 1970 by Brian O'Leary, who's no longer with us. But
We have that book, don't we?
We do have that book. We
yeah.
have an original copy
Wow,
of
there you
that book.
Okay,
Alex
here we
Constantine,
go.
one of my favorite books, The Covert War on Rock, showing you that it was, well, we all know about COINTELPRO.
We do, absolutely.
Which was the CIA's effort to discredit not only the Black Panthers, but any dissident voices from the miscreants, mainly out of music.
Yeah.
And the late Dave McGowan's Weird Scenes
Inside the Canyon is just, it's a mind-blowing book.
It's a brilliant book. You've read it twice. I've read it twice.
I had it.
And I need to read it many times.
You just, you need a lot of reads to actually absorb all the information.
It is one of the only books that actually states that the entire countercultural music movement and hippie movement may have been a construct out of the... It's amazing. What do we have? Frank Zappa, whose father was working in germ warfare, biowarfare, Joan Baez. They were all Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison's
his father
dad
gave us the Bay of Tolkien.
He was Admiral Morrison. What's the name?
Now, Alex Constantine has an amazing site. It's an anti-fascist site.
Yeah.
Numerous other books, endless blogs. You very rarely see him in TV documentaries.
The Covert War Against Rock.
He's
lots of talks on YouTube. Yeah.
You know, that is one of the most fascinating books you'll ever come across. Anything by Dave McGowan is well worth the read, but that's the sine qua non. Weird Scenes.
It is.
Struck the heart of the countercultural movement.
We have.
Okay. Now we've got this book in the middle here.
Yeah.
Jim Fetzer in many ways has been cancelled.
He has.
He's problematic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean the Zapruder film wasn't hoaxed in many ways. It's been altered obsessively.
You can
and
see
wasn't even shot on Super 8.
It's absolutely glaring at the cuts and the changes that were made.
Some of the best research comes out of Melbourne, actually. And it looks like it was shot on 16 mil, shrunk down.
Yeah.
And incredible stuff put in there.
Okay.
Well, let's get to Judith Baker.
Lee and me.
She's an astounding purpose.
Yeah.
She was the mistress of Lee Harvey Oswald there.
So she claims. So she was. She first became known as a prodigy in cancer research.
That's right.
Yeah, and then later, for her assertion in 1999, she came out that while conducting cancer research in New Orleans, in the summer of 1963, she had a love affair with Lee Harvey Oswald. So she was his mistress.
And she was really shocked that actually her cancer research wasn't about resolving cancer. No, it was about creating fast-acting
They were actually
cancers.
trying to
get
Fidel by injecting him with fast-acting cancer to kill him. So
now, Dr. Mary's Monkey there by Edward T. Haslam. He is an astounding man, but also the late, great Jim Mars.
And Mary Sherman.
Yes.
Mary Sherman.
That Mary Sherman story is frightening.
It is.
And it's about the particle accelerator buried underneath there. Now, she died. It looked like they actually threw her into that accelerator.
She was roasted, literally.
Frightening.
It was pretty scary what they did to her.
Okay, now this book is rather odd. This book is way off mark and yet so ahead of its time.
Right.
And you know why?
Why is that?
Because this spoke about MK Ultra.
Oh, right. Mind control.
The House Select Committee.
Okay.
And it was in the late 60s.
Okay.
And Delgado there showing that you can actually control a ball by the electrodes in its head.
That was weird, wasn't it?
I love that toy that's the actually battery-operated fighting ball, which in a way is very sort of allegorous to what was happening in this mind control. But I think they actually paint Lee Harvey Oswald there as a Soviet spy, way off the money.
Not a Soviet spy.
But disinformation mixed with real information.
Not a Soviet spy. If he was a Soviet spy, the Americans wouldn't have, accepted him back into America with open arms. And his wife, who was the niece of a KGB officer. I mean, give me a break, people. Come on.
Yeah.
Something's going on there.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, we're really going to work on getting a great guest for the week of the 60th anniversary of the assassination, because we have lectured around this country
Every year.
endlessly on that. And
Absolutely.
we actually recreated for the 50th
In,
anniversary the
almost
Carousel
10 years
Club.
ago. Yeah,
We
it
had
was
the
10 years ago.
stripper,
Oh my God,
we
we
had
had
the
everybody.
memory act,
Yep.
we had the comedian.
We had everybody.
And you were actually Dorothy Kilgallen.
I was.
And you actually had that microphone farm in front of you. But if you can find it, have a look for it. Just look at the reviews. Now, here we've got it. Can you look this up for me?
Yeah.
This was actually put together by a very incredible journalist.
Yeah.
And this was Google. This was the internet. This was YouTube in 1970 in book form. This was all addresses, literature, counterculture, equipment, ideas for the entire world. Now, tell us, Stuart Brand was the name of the gentleman that put that together. And he kept recreating it up until about 1998 when the internet took over.
Yeah.
But it was massive. It's a massive
So it featured
book.
essays and articles, but was primarily focused on product reviews.
But all alternative products,
Absolutely.
very ecologically conscious,
very
searching for great. And do you know what?
What?
He created the whole Earth bus. And how about this? You know how we've all got those book things now where you can go and get books for free?
Oh, yeah, the little
book
boxes.
exchange.
Yeah.
He created a bus, which was primarily that.
Right.
And he would travel around with his wife. And they would exchange books for nothing.
Wow.
And they would have the whole Earth catalogue and completely
businesses wouldn't like that because
they wouldn't.
You know, anything that's barter is not good for the economy. Well, for people making lots of money.
But if you want to get a hard data before the electromagnetic pulse weapon comes in, if you want to get the internet into your hands, go up and find a secondhand copy of this.
Yeah.
They are around.
They are.
And they are astounding. We have one, yes.
Yeah.
And we've also got other abbreviations on it, like the fringes of reason.
Yes, we do.
Now, can you, A.B. Hoffman, part of the Yippie movement, part of the incredible Paul Krasman, steal this book? And lots of people did. And then later on, he went to write, steal this urine test. It all made complete sense. Now, he was a revolutionary to end all revolutionaries. I just love the man. Great sense of humor, but a great sense of being not an anarchist, but someone who exemplified the whole notion of counterculture.
So this was written in 70 and published in 71. So it exemplified the counterculture of the 60s.
And the fight against the corporations, these people were realizing the government was no longer government. It was corporations and they were squashing it.
You know, so the books sold more than 250,000 copies between April and November of 1971, but the number of copies that were stolen is unknown.
Of course.
You know.
And he was a very close colleague of the late and not so long ago, the extraordinary Paul Krasner, who created the realist.
It mainly focused on ways to fight against corporations
and ways to be independent.
Yeah. So and it was written for in a form of a guide for the youth, you know, at the time. So
they really, as you can see there, that man was arrested more times than you can poke a stick at.
He was
an extraordinary figure. Now, here's one of the most controversial books of the lot.
Yes.
The Anarchist Cookbook. And I put some things in to balance it out. Do you know there was a Christian version of it? Can you actually read that up in the right-hand corner?
What's that? Hang on.
Yeah, it's very difficult to read, but when you blow it up to a bigger screen at home, maybe. And this, I'm sorry for people on radio.
Yeah.
Again, this is highly visual. You need to go to our YouTube channel. In the end, there is a great documentary out on Tubi about the author of the book who condemns himself and feels extremely guilty these days.
Yeah.
There's an actually European film called The Anarchist Cookbook that's worth looking at, but it is not the book itself.
No.
The book was written by William Powell, and the book was basically, and we're not going to state that too strongly here.
Yeah.
But it was how to manufacture things to really take down governments of the world. I think it'd be a book that if you tried to purchase even secondhand online today, you'd be flagged and tracked for
but
it.
wouldn't they flag the people that are selling the book? This is what I don't understand. It's like these people selling this book. If nobody was selling it, you wouldn't be able to get a hold of it.
An anarchist just cooking a meal there.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I wonder what the
Yes.
alchemist cookbook was. You know, it was all
I-
grimoires, was it,
Who
basically?
knows?
But, you know, I know that he has taken a beating for this book. And
Absolutely.
his intentions were pure, but this book got used in many frightening situations.
Well, like anything, I'm sure that
Just like this
I'm
friggin'
sure that
book.
Oppenheimer created, the bomb for good. I don't know how, but
Yeah, that's
he was
ridiculous.
devastated when it was
Destroyer of worlds.
used, for the wrong
But
reason.
how about this
Yeah.
book? This J.D. Salinger, if
Salinger.
this guy wasn't linked to the intelligence agencies, I don't know. This book has been found in the hands of so many predominant
Mind control
worldwide,
victims.
well, supposed killers that
Supposedly,
maybe
yeah.
never did the killing. John
Well,
Lennon's
yeah,
killer.
yeah.
Gee,
Sahan.
yeah, very strange.
Yeah,
This novel.
there was.
What do we know about Salinger? I don't know why. All those years ago, actually, there's Anton LaVey. Why I had that image of the Church of Satan there? But it has some link to Salinger. And Salinger's a pretty odd, enigmatic author himself that spent a lot of time in isolation. So you see The Catcher in the Rye out there. Get that book. It's a very strange book. And, yeah, I don't know about Salinger at all, but it was named one of the greatest critically acclaimed books ever written.
Have you read it?
No, I've never read it, but I think I need to sit down.
The Catcher in the Rye?
Well, you shouldn't be asking that when you're putting a slideshow up here on Untold
it's
Radio.
up to people if they want to go and read it. I mean, we're not forcing anybody to.
Yeah,
do anything.
it's one of those books I never got round to.
Yeah.
But one of those books that I just kept seeing in the hands, in the homes, in the situations.
All the time.
Now, here is a remarkable book.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I think the name of the historian who was just basically out of school to tell us that Hitler actually died outside the bunker.
Oh, the young boy, yeah.
Yeah, Trevor Roper, was it?
Yeah, something like that.
But all these years later, independently published in one publishing rung is this astounding book. Let's not worry about the millions of programs and books that have been written about Hitler lived and went down to Argentina.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter because this is the man who actually did live and get down there.
Well, he had
Lawrence
the money.
DeMello knows that. Check out Lawrence DeMello on YouTube. What an incredibly beautiful and astounding researcher. She lives in Argentina. I think she's married to a fencer and a horseman down there. She is a great researcher, but not as astounding as Paul Manning, who exposed this. And the day that this book was exposed, that Martin Bormann, who was had the keys to the cash.
He had the bank accounts.
And he went down there and created
to all the money that was stolen during Second World War. Yeah.
Assisted IBM, Krupp Steel. There's so many companies that are up there today, Fortune 500 companies that are living
still going today
off the wealth of that insanity of the Nazi regime.
Yeah, so the Nazis actually, they took off their their SS uniforms and put on their Hugo Boss business suits.
The Fourth Reich in the sun.
Absolutely. And just kept
this
going.
book exposed it all.
They really did win the war.
This book was published, and we're talking over the top of each other.
Sorry.
The publisher was kneecapped, and his daughter died shortly after. So that's an incredible book. It's been reprinted and can be cheaply picked up from Amazon. But I'm not talking about it for that.
No.
Now, do we know about this beautiful hand model?
Oh my! She's not a hand model.
Well, she was initially. That's how she started.
She's modeling more than a hands in the middle picture there.
She was the first person to be written about to be a mind control sex slave and assassin working for the CIA. And believe me, she married the original man that was the birth of Coast to Coast.
That's right.
Now, who was that? Long John
Nebel.
Yes.
Yep.
So before Coast to Coast, there was Midnight Radio on Paranormal Subjects. And in the 70s, he married Candy Jones. At night, sometimes.
She was a 40s model, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was 50s. I think she'd take phone calls and disappear for weeks. And he didn't know what was going on. This was extremely
What kind of a relationship did they have? Can you imagine if somebody rang me in the middle of the night and I just got up and left for a couple of weeks and you didn't query and ask me where the hell I'd be?
I wouldn't need to query. I'd just go, she's gone on another cruise. Donald Bain, what an astounding book written in 1975. And really, this is seeped
It's a really frightening book, that one, actually.
It is. It has seeped into counterculture.
Yeah, it has.
Television, films, pop culture, like you wouldn't believe, and been diluted.
Yeah,
But the truth exists. in this incredible book at that
Mhm.
time
Yeah.
by Long John Nebel, who
Yeah.
was the forerunner to all things late
Yeah.
night paranormal radio.
And these are splinter ones off there, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are. And these are wild.
Transformation of America.
Now, that is Kathy Bryant.
It is.
Yeah, Kathy O'Brien.
Yep.
Which
Bryce
Gorilla
Taylor
News
is.
Network did a great doco on. Short little doco.
Thanks for the memories.
Oh, look, this is an
Bryce Taylor.
astounding
It's a
story.
hilarious story.
Now, this book is about her basically being a mind control sex slave to
Mhm.
all these incredible celebrities.
And you can see Bob Hope
was her controller.
Henry Kissinger, Ronald Reagan, Bush, everybody, all those faces up there. Apparently, the Queen of England supposedly had taken her child, and it was just, the story is just,
it's mind-blowing.
It's off the planet. It
now,
really
who
is.
knows whether it's true or not?
Well,
but what I love
don't know.
about this going
Mhm.
into popular culture is it's the same title as Bob Hope's memoirs.
Thanks for the memories.
Yeah. So what happened was
Mhm.
people ordered this book by mistake.
Well, they ordered
and
the
they
Bob
got
Hope.
the shock of
They ordered if you ordered the Bob Hope, thanks for the memories. sometimes you
ended
got
up
Bryce Taylor's, account of her becoming a sex slave.
Now, disinformation.
Not funny, but
with Mr. Metzger there.
Yes,
did
that's right.
An incredible,
He did.
well over 15, 20 years ago. Disinfo News did an amazing piece on her, and her story is mind-boggling. But you know what? When you think about it, there could be something to it.
Well, the stories don't come out of a vacuum. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Now, this book you have to talk about.
I
This
have
is
to.
one of the greatest PR specialists for music in the world. Prince's PR man.
This book actually.
ZZ Top's PR man.
Yeah. But this book, when I read it, I understood humanity.
He is.
And why we are so, I'm going to say it, effed up.
Yeah.
Seriously.
He is a
Howard Bloom is just an amazing. He's a
psychologist behind the scenes and geneticist.
Yes,
he really understood human DNA.
Totally understands.
And it's basically what is wrong with humanity in many ways.
And can't be fixed. I can tell you right now, it can't be fixed.
So look for it. I don't know if this book's still in print.
Actually, you found a copy a few weeks ago in one of those little boxes, the book exchange that you were talking about.
He wrote many other books, but this is his most
This is the
important
one,
book.
The Lucifer Principle. If you want to understand your psychology and human psychology, this is the book, in my opinion.
But what astounds me is this man came out of the rock music world.
Yeah, I know.
He was able to get left of center bands into like the Wall Street Journal, into Forbes listings.
Well, then that means he knows exactly what he's talking about.
And people said he's an absolute maverick. He's actually seen as the king of public relations for the rock world.
Mm-hmm.
Just about everyone you could imagine went through his offices. But at the same time, desperately, and he reckons he was only doing that PR to understand the anthropology, the sociology of humanity.
Yeah, well, he did. He got it.
Now, here's a man that breaks my heart.
Oh, Jim
the late
Keith.
Jim Keith, who died again under very mysterious circumstances. I think he fell off the stage at Burning Man, went into hospital, said, I don't want to undergo anesthetic. They put him under anesthetic.
And he died.
You know, the other frightening thing is that his wife literally died to a year to the day.
Yeah.
After that. Now, I actually got a film crew. I got in touch with Jim Keith. I spoke to him. He was a marvelous man. His books are all fascinating. Again, like Dave McGowan, he doesn't literally state this, that, or the other.
He just writes all the facts, and then
Secrets and Suppressed.
Oh, that's amazing.
Like the greatest news clipping.
Abandoned ideas
of
hidden history. So. And there's a lot of that there.
There's that complete transcript of the guy that went on the news broadcast in the States.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
that's
that
right.
we actually have the film footage of.
Yes.
And really lost the plot. And I think his father
was on the show,
He was the chief medical consultant.
Yeah.
And so he was allowed into the studio.
And
he was just using a toy gun, wasn't he?
He was. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
he scared people.
You know what I'm going to do? We're going to digitize that footage, get it up, and link it to the article in Secret and Suppressed, because we're being rather ambiguous here. But
look, we're just putting these up. If you're interested in books that are, left of center, different ideas,
I think
have something to
from
say.
Illuminate Press actually released a lot of Jim Keith's stuff. I think maybe Parfrey did as well. Now we are hoping, fingers crossed.
Well, he said he would come on the show.
Peter Levinder,
time permitting.
Yeah.
because he's a very, very busy man, and we
To
totally
the Stars
understand.
Academy. He's been working with Tom
Well,
DeLonge.
I want to find out what's happened to Tom, but anyway,
I want to find out. And he wrote Secret Machines, the sort of
he did.
fictional.
Yeah.
I mean, is it fiction? Is it
Well,
non-fiction?
you
Who
know,
knows? With
who knows?
Tom DeLonge in tandem.
Exactly.
And that was one of the first books published by the To the Stars Academy. But these
three books,
say it
I've read
all.
all three of them. They're amazing.
They're
They're
unbelievable.
hardcore. A little bit repetitive at times, you know, he's trying to really get his point across, and he doesn't need to, because I got it the first time. But, you know, it's all that information. And book 1, The Nine, that's that whole you know what we're talking about.
It's also some things are right, some things
yeah,
are a little
it could
sketchy.
be a little bit.
I don't think Roddenberry was not in that garage.
No, he
with
wasn't.
Andre
Later
Pujara.
on, he came in.
Later on.
Yeah, so.
But The Nine, The Warm Gun, The Manson Secret.
Oh, the Manson secret's fascinating.
The
fascinating.
Manson, you know,
I know.
his life was absolutely tragic.
Very tragic.
It also goes into the topography, the geography, that
of
he
where
was
he was
actually born in that pre-American Indian culture on a mound.
On mounds.
Which
the
makes
snake
you
mounds.
think that there is something resonating in the geography of the background that governs the life force.
I did watch
destiny.
that new Pet Cemetery Bloodlines the other day, and it's in the earth, man. It's
you feel it's in the earth.
Well, you know, yeah. Anyway.
Okay, well, these are some authors that, to me, at times are rather questionable, but they go into
but still
the
interesting.
synchro-mystic notion,
yeah.
And that is decoding images, symbolism in films, looking at these events that change history as mass rituals.
So but the most dangerous book in the world. Well, you know,
I don't think it's that dangerous.
I don't think so, mate. But anyway, but you know,
and Jay Dwyer's Esoteric Hollywood is interesting. I think sometimes, you know, they're going down the highway and they veer to the right a little bit too much. They read too much into things. But then who's to say?
Well,
because
who is to
these
say?
Repetitive images keep occurring. When you look at the Super Bowl, you're wondering, who in the hell is choreographing these things and coming up with all this occult symbolism?
I think the devil's doing it.
Well, is it the devil, you know?
Anyway,
is it the devil, or is it creative bankruptcy?
It could be that. It could be that as well. It could be a bit of both.
Deeper behind
Who knows?
You know, I don't really believe that there's such a thing as the Illuminati today. I mean, there was Adam Weishaupt 300 and something years ago, and they didn't get too far. But lots of people have usurped that notion.
We know that there's a bunch of people with all the money.
Well, you wonder
sitting
about
up there and
Epstein
deciding
there on Leader Island with like the Egyptian sort of what was going on in that
and
thing.
Deciding, you know, when to put interest rates up and, you know, when to bankrupt us all. I mean, we know that stuff happens all the time.
Now, we have a great love for independent press. We always have. The unfortunate thing about independent press, it's not catalogued properly.
No, it's not.
In archives across the world.
It doesn't get into the
and one of the
libraries.
greatest companies that was actually shamefully purchased by that frightening gun magazine, I'm not even going to name it, is Loom Panics.
It
started out as one of the most out there book companies in the frigging world.
Absolutely.
You know,
but then got taken over.
Their book catalogs are so sold for a fortune, I'll say it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They purchased the entire, well, did they? Oh, I don't know. Please, I hope not. But maybe they did.
Who knows?
Rumor is everywhere. Loom Panics, please look for their literature. Their book on Subterranean Worlds
it's
one
fabulous.
of the most definitive books ever.
Absolutely. And how to start your own country.
Yeah. Surviving on the streets. How to get down without going out.
Yeah,
Love their titles. They were so nifty in their titles. And they get wilder and wilder.
Yeah, they do.
Now, they had a good at least 2 to 3 decades run with a voluminous amount of independent press.
In the 90s, they were like going great guns.
Now, we were so excited by everything they published. And again, just like Adam Parfrey and so much other literature. So keep an eye out in the secondhand world.
Yeah, because people are getting rid of their books. And
look, the Internet Archives has done a great job on Illuminate Press.
They have.
And Loom Panics.
Yep.
You can go up and get digital copies. Please donate just a small amount to them.
Yeah.
And you can read a lot of this literature that's
Absolutely.
lost because, as we said, here's some other great how to hide things in public places. Now, there's Bill Casing, who wrote the first book that was The Moon Denied. We never went to the moon.
Yeah, right.
Great hideouts in the West. How to sneak into movies. What a book that is.
Well, there's no movies anymore. It's just sneaking into your own home. But
how to force a company out of business. I mean,
Yeah.
these books are wicked, they're naughty, they're
Yeah.
cheeky.
They're cheeky.
But what they do is they
Mm.
actually put into your hands the power
Some
behind
power.
David when we're
Yeah.
faced with Goliath.
Goliath. Yeah.
And if
Absolutely.
anything, they're just so freaking humorous
Yeah,
to
they
read.
are. They are.
And just extraordinary pieces of independent literature.
Counterculture literature.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
So, official libraries will never record this stuff. It
No, they
hasn't
won't.
come from Simon and Schuster.
No.
It's never gone through Macmillan Press.
No.
And sometimes it just dies. I mean, one of the
Well,
most...
they do a 500 book if they do 500 book run, and that's it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And then they become so valuable because they're not out there anymore.
Yeah.
You know.
So I think that it's important to actually get these books and save them and tell other people about them and tell them to grab them, just in case you do have to hide things in public places. I think the next set of titles coming up is rather exciting. And just remember, you're with J. Katz and Aspasia here on Untold Radio. This is episode 51.
Confessions of a Dangerous Book.
We're moving very close to an entire year of shows.
Yeah, we are.
How to disappear completely and never be found again. The art and science of dumpster diving. Now, you can talk about the fact that you still do lots of dumpster diving.
Well, not so much dumpster, but definitely the recycling bins now, because people have clearly got too much money and just throwing out perfectly brand new things.
So
things that are still
the
new.
counterpoint to the anarchic book.
Yes.
Book.
Yeah.
Don't shoot the bastards yet. 101 ways to salvage your freedom.
Yeah.
So it's alternatives,
I don't know if you could disappear now completely and never be found, because everything is so electronic. It'd be hard to try.
I love this one, Outwitting Neighbors. The titles are just incredible.
What about The Art of Getting Even?
Well, I mean, we showed that great Linda Blair film on Revenge.
Yeah, we did. Oh, my God, yeah.
But
Okay,
tell
don't
us
shoot
about...
the bastards yet.
What?
101 more ways to salvage freedom.
Now, what I was going to say to you here, tell people that you're actually finding brand new clothing, brand new things in garbage, because you recycle
in the
bottles.
recycling bins, which there's no food matter or anything like that. So people just cardboard and bottles, and then they're putting in brand new clothes with tags still on.
How many shoes did we just give to my brother that
my
were
God.
brand new?
Well,
there must be at least 50 pairs of children's shoes there.
And not,
when they go to landfill,
label
just insanity.
Brand new. Some of them still had the tags on them. I just don't understand what's wrong with people, but that's what's wrong. Too much money. That's their problem.
Now, this book scares me a little bit
Which
over
one?
here on the, if you're looking at the screen, the left-hand side, and people please get
Oh,
up on the
genitology.
YouTube. Genitology, reading your genitals.
Why
Now,
would
your mother used to read the tea leaves, but reading
tea leaves is one thing, but reading, how do you do that? And what are you looking for?
Yeah.
What are you looking for? Seriously.
I know. Now, what about the Church
that book we don't have, but anyway.
What about the Church of Subgenius? Now, someone years ago, I think maybe for our wedding, they actually paid for you and me to become ministers in the Church of Subgenius.
They did. Not that I've ever used it, but it's there if I ever need it.
Bob. So the Church of Subgenius, you don't know about it. It's just like the Extraordinary Negative Land.
Yeah.
They're real culture jammers.
Yeah.
They make... They're
very clever, very funny.
Robert Anton Wilson was like one of their key members.
He was.
And I think in many ways, Robert Anton Wilson, it's playing around with like the Illuminus trilogy.
Yeah.
It's playing around with the notion of conspiratorial thought.
Yeah.
But not necessarily believing everything under that banner, but satirizing it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think that's sort of what Mel Brooks did with Springtime for Hitler. If you're going to have to fight
the
back
producers
at the oppressor, the way to do it is to actually create
hilarity. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think that's the joy of Subgenius.
And the other one's the Little Panics
live in
Las Vegas.
Yeah. Now here's one of Michael Cremo did appear on Alex and Doug's
He did.
Untold
Forbidden
Radio.
Archaeology.
Now, though, that is one of the most profound books you're ever going to come across. But we're going to get on to William Bromley. We're going to find him.
I love The Gods of Eden. That was such an amazing book. That was one of those key books,
Well, I think it's like the Lucifer Principle.
It is.
He set out-
That and Alan Alford's book on the pyramids is also one of those. There's 10 books that I've got that were like game changers for me. Gods of Eden, the Lucifer Principle, and Alan Alford's I can't remember the title of it
It's
now.
an Egyptian.
It's an Egyptian book. Those
Okay.
three books were like
Well,
major.
David Hatcher Childress too.
Yeah.
Adventures Unlimited.
Yes.
What an independent book company that was.
Look him up. He's
And
got
Brian
lots.
Forster is still going strong today.
Oh, yeah,
He is the king of cranial deformation.
right.
It's not cradle boarding, is it? At
Yeah,
all.
yeah, no,
And
it's
it
not.
primarily shows that there's no occipital suture there.
Yeah, which is a problem.
It's not a deformation. It's not cradle
it's
boarding.
something else.
It's something else.
Yeah.
And it's an incredibly enlarged, like by 25% cranial cavity for
Yeah.
the brain.
Capacity,
But Brumley set out to actually understand why humanity
Wars.
always wars,
Yeah.
why it pits itself against each other. And he found there was an anomalous factor
Every time
to every
it
incident.
goes so far, and then all of a sudden there'd be UFOs in the picture, and he'd pull back from it,
Yes.
put the book away, and then go back to it after a few months or a year or so, and then back again.
Yeah.
That
Now,
was.
here's a man we've always loved, and we spoke about him when
Trevor
we were
James,
critiquing the film Nope.
We were.
And Trevor James Constable was a student of Wilhelm Reich.
He was.
And with a great sense of humour. Weather Engineering on the High Seas. We're going to have to
Hilarious.
find a really good copy of that.
I think there might be one on YouTube. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Have a look for it yourselves. But he
It's
is
called
all about...
Weather Engineering on the High Seas by Trevor James Constable.
Okay, I think I just said that.
Well, I'm just repeating just in case.
As you can see there around our Apollo astronaut on the moon there is a blue orgone sheen.
Yeah.
Now, it was all about the deadly orgone, but it was also about the critters in the sky that live in the sky. And he actually trained his children to see those critters. They go into the Mojave Desert, look up in the sky. Within hours, they were seeing those critters. And when we went to the Nullarbor for To Catch a Flying Star, which we played a couple of weeks ago, with all those other researchers, we actually filmed what looked like single-cell protozoas of an incredible size that were only visible in the infrared spectrum.
Yeah.
So the cosmic pulse of life, and then the ultimate health plan, especially for you in the States where it's really frightening your health system, build yourself an orgone accumulator. There is, if you go back to the original papers on the accumulator before the American health system discredited it,
became a corporation.
it is astounding the amount of people that were assisted by the accumulator.
Yeah.
Now, Edward Ruppelt, Andrew Full, and the story of James E. McDonald. Those are two of the most important books in ufology, followed by the third and craziest book by Robert Emmenegger, UFOs Past, Present, and Future, which became a documentary in which we said there was a little bit of footage from the landing at Holloman Air Force Base, and that's a fascinating story behind that. Ruppelt was the man that coined the term UFO. We're sticking to that because we think UAP has got too much of a dark military threat attached to it.
It does.
We're going to stick to Ruppelt's.
I like UFO, unidentified.
You've got to get the original 1955 because that book was torn off the shelves and then replaced with what was supposed to be Ruppelt's Worlds. I don't believe that, and he died shortly after. James McDonald died too young from supposed suicide.
Well,
he was one of the world's greatest astrophysicists. He was out here in Australia for the CSIRO, and he looked at that astounding case.
He did.
One of the largest eyewitness cases in the world, 66.
Yeah, Westall 66.
And that is an astounding book by Andrew Full. Two really important books, and one crazy kooky book that's also a documentary. But Robert Emmenegger is an interesting man.
But that book is what actually is happening at the moment. UFOs Past, Present, Future is the military industrial complex trying to, feel its way and telling the people about UFOs and seeing how they take it. Okay.
Now, Ken Thomas, who created the incredible, we used to bring this in.
Yeah.
And it was a great fanzine, journal, newspaper, Steam Shovel Press with the late great Jim Keith and the story of the late Danny Castellaro, who was murdered.
Yes.
You cannot slash your wrists virtually to the point
that
your head
pull
falls
them
off.
Yeah, that's a bit hardcore.
And Castellaro was sort of unraveling it all. Now, what was the software that even
Primus
that got out here? The story of Primus.
So what it was the American government was selling this software to all the intelligence agencies of other countries. well, intelligence,
And it had a
policing.
trapdoor.
And it had a back door, well, not a trapdoor, but a back door that they could actually enter it whenever they wanted to and see what was being put on those systems. So that's very, very naughty. That's like huge counter espionage.
Let's remove Alex Jones from the equation of Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, because
but even though he's the first one to get in there and film that ritual,
that doesn't mean he created it.
How bizarre.
Oh, that's
Bohemian
just
Grove.
it is.
What
It's
goes on there?
It's a bizarre.
And they're all worshipping Moloch, the stone owl,
a 40-foot owl.
And it's really worth it. You've got nothing to do with that. Now, I would never trust Tex Mars too much.
Right.
That's just my opinion. Remember that great document we've got on Tex Mars of the phallic symbols of the New World Order?
Oh my God!
Oh yeah!
Oh
one
God!
Of the funniest.
Did my head in that thing?
Books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, here's the late Paul Krasner,
Yeah.
who we actually had a meal with in our archives, who is an astounding human being.
Yeah.
And to get his point across, he used satire big time.
He did.
And the realist was newsagent available.
Yes, it was. An amazing fanzine. It was a fanzine, a magazine. What would you call it?
It was a newspaper.
A newspaper, yeah.
But he managed to get stories about
the wackiest stories in there. But there was always an element of truth in them.
Yep.
And that's why they sold. That's why people believed those really crazy stories, because there was that element of truth.
There's an extreme story that perpetrated, and I'm not going to go into it.
No, don't do it.
But it does talk about an indiscretion by Lyndon Johnson and Kennedy's body on Air Force One returning back after the murder in Dallas.
Use your imagination.
Yeah, and that story has got out there as if it was real.
Yeah.
And it's all thanks to the extraordinary
Paul Krasner.
rhyme and reason of Paul Krasner. Now, we actually saw a great talk where he was speaking about Milo Thomas's father, Danny Thomas, in another way that we can't describe here either.
It says free thought, criticism, and satire. I mean, it says it all.
This man was condemned. He was the creator there with A.B. Hoffman and the Yippie movement.
Yes.
And really up there with Mae Brazel as well.
He was.
As a countercultural investigator. An astounding man, an hilarious man, and someone that counterculture really needed to have exist.
Absolutely.
And here we go. We're ending here.
Here we are.
And if you want to see what happened to the world in terms of our incredible General Smedley Butler there and War as a Racket, you've got to look at Jekyll Island.
Yes, you
and
do.
what was happening there at the turn of the 20th century. And then you have to go and look at Mae Brazel's work. Now, you can go up and listen to literally hundreds of radio programs by Mae Brazel.
Oh, my God. I can't believe her radio programs. She used to do a radio program and she would just rattle off the names and she would tell you who they were.
That was the reason why I think they took her out.
And how they were connected.
Yeah.
How they were connected to each other. And she had an astounding mind.
Astounding mind. I think she lost it a bit with Alternative 3, the television hoax.
Well,
But it was bound to happen. When you're actually doing detective work, there are so many false leads.
But you know what was weird? We bought her radio, radio programs over 10 years ago, maybe more, and we were listening to them, and they had been recorded in the 80s, and none of the names had changed.
70s and 80s.
70s and 80s, but the names that were in the news, the shakers and movers of American, culture and finance and everything, were still the same people.
Yeah,
same people.
Absolutely.
And it's like, what's going on there? You know what I mean? You think about it and you go, these people were there in the 70s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and here we are in the 90s and the early 2000s, and it's still the same people. Have these people got like portraits in the attic?
Yeah.
And they're still living all this time?
Well, it's just what you were saying about the Fourth Reich and the Sun.
Well, that's right.
Check out
Take off your SS uniform, put on your Hugo Boss.
And the grandchildren.
Exactly.
They're still there. Now you're moving out of frame.
Sorry.
All right. Okay.
All right. Well, that's our most dangerous Confessions of a Dangerous Book.
Yeah, and look, we've only touched the surface. It's a few fascinating novels. I sincerely hope there's a few books there that you haven't seen that will tickle your imagination.
Yeah, you can go through it and look. A lot of them you can probably find on Kindles and that sort of stuff, and just, you know.
Well, I reckon what you do is you search your bookshops, you search for independent publishers before you go anywhere near those big billion-trillion-dollar leviathans like Amazon.
Yeah.
You know, they don't need any more money.
No,
it's
they clearly
independent
don't.
authors that deserve
I mean,
your
those
money.
people have got enough money to last them like 10 lifetimes.
Yeah, I mean, you can only drive one car at a time.
Well,
People,
but you can own a million.
I know you can.
Yeah. Anyway,
look, thank you so much. We appreciate your support and you being there for us. As we've said before to our audio listeners, you're missing out. You need to punch our algorithm up.
Or the titles are all there. I mean, you can listen to this stuff and just jot the names down and, you know, go and find those books if you're interested in any of them. But there's a lot of books there that are absolutely fascinating and might, you know, turn your head a little bit other ways of thinking.
All right. Well, thank you, Aspasia.
You're very welcome.
My name is Jay Katz, and let's hope tomorrow it's yes. And my heart is with our Indigenous culture because they at least need someone in the parliament to assist with the major decisions of this country.
Absolutely.
If we look back on that culture only lived in harmony with this continent. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure a lot of the anomalous mysteries is there in their narrative history. Yeah. And we could find out about our Yowie, our Bigfoot.
Oh, the answers are all there.
Gina, they're all there.
Yeah.
The trouble is
we don't ask them.
We've done so much harm.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is sacred.
Yeah.
It has to be treated in a sacred sense and respected. The midnight, the Martha light.
All those stuff.
All right. And next week we
don't know. We don't know what we've got next week. Whatever we have.
We have. But hopefully it will be an interview.
We'll have something interesting, I'm sure.
It'll be the exclamation mark on 52
episodes. It'll be a year.
Which will make a year.
That we've
we
been
just
doing
love everyone else that does the podcast on this station.
Absolutely.
And we really cherish our supporters.
Hopefully we can go for another year.
Wow.
We'll see what happens.
I'm exhausted already.
All right. I'm going to play our promo and then our ending, and that's it for today.
If you're looking for presents for Christmas, just stick the walls with Bigfoot wallpaper.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.